Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Victoire. I am your host, Emir. Before we begin today's episode, I ask that you kindly subscribe to our channel, like, and share our videos. It helps us spread these inspirational stories with more people near and far. Today's guest is a wrestling sensation. Well, actually, he's more than just that. He's a wrestling coach. He's a wrestling manager, a producer, and for a number of years, he was a revolutionary force alongside Alberto Del Rio in the WWE. The man I'm talking about is Jesus Ricardo Rodriguez. Victoire. Sponsored by California's own Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market for all your organic produce, healthy foods, and supplement needs. California's own trusted tattoo company and mobile body art bus 760-645-0485. Palm Springs, California, Indian Wells, California, Rancho Mirage, California. They're all considered a destination hotspot, a second home haven. With an exquisite record of negotiating the finest deals for clients, Lowell Folsom III and Associates always deliver. Contact Lowell today at 760-391-2504. Desert Golfing Digest, golfing and travel information of the Coachella Valley, 760-399-6517. And from Yucaipa, California, Steamers, Fine Cleaners, and Laundry, a 5-star service on a first-name basis, 909-797-1947. And if you're looking to buy or sell real estate in the Coachella Valley, then look no further than Realtor Steve Tadros, 760-225-9998. And now, on with the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Victoire. Tonight, I am joined by Jesus Ricardo Rodriguez. This is a man who's had a stellar career in the world of professional wrestling. Not only has he been a ring announcer, a commentator, manager to a recent WWE World Champion. He's also a trainer of the Stars of the Future and a producer at MLW. Jesus, it is a pleasure. Welcome to Victoire.
Merci beaucoup. Oh no, Victoire, is that French or Italian? I'm not sure.
That is French, my friend. It's French for victory.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Well,
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be a part of this. And when you mentioned, who had referred you, I was all about it. So I'm happy to be here.
yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, my friend. You've had, like I said before, you've had a stellar career. Unbelievable. It's a meteoric rise. I mean, you've really had your hands everywhere in the world of professional wrestling. But for those who don't know, we'll go back to the beginning, to your life prior to pro wrestling, because we really want to know what inspired you to get there. What was your childhood like? Family life, things like that. How did you support yourself when you were starting out? So I shall give you the platform, Jesus.
Well, I mean, it's wild when I think about, and it's not until people tell me what I've done that I realize what I've done.
Yeah.
And it's unreal. It really is when I think about like the resume, the buildup that has come across throughout my career in my last 18 years of doing this.
Mhm.
I'm very grateful for everything that I've accomplished and all the ups and all the downs. And there's been plenty of both.
Mhm.
I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. Born and raised for the most part. I mean, San Fernando Valley. Born in Burbank, but I grew up around Van Nuys and that whole area. So all SoCal, man, that was like my stomping ground for so long.
Yeah.
I played soccer growing up for as long as I can remember, and then I was involved in sports in school, and then having some sort of physical ability was basically everything I've done since I was a kid. And I mean, I grew up watching lucha libre, so Mexican style lucha libre as a kid, for especially in my early years as a child. So I grew up watching, like Atlantis, who was my very first hero. Atlantis, Máscara Sagrada, Tinieblas, Felino, Octagon, Ultimo Dragon. You know, those guys are the guys that I grew up watching, and I was so amazed by the athleticism and then the costumes, the capes, the masks, the mask, as you can see.
Yeah.
Um, that whole culture and that whole vibe, the energy of that was behind Lucha Libre is what made me fall in love with it.
Mhm.
And I grew up around that.
Yeah.
So I mean, eventually as I got older, I kind of grew out of it for a little while, and then just kind of ventured into something else. So I started playing soccer, so
Mhm.
football. That became my passion for many years. Unfortunately, at a certain age, probably like around at the age of 16, I had an accident, and I had I broke both of my legs,
Wow.
so I couldn't play anymore. I
Was that?
have plates and screws. I have plates and screws in both of my legs. Um, so that kind of took me away from playing soccer for a good solid while. Uh, and then what did I end up doing? I ended up wrestling.
Yeah.
So so I got involved. I got involved with pro wrestling. I started doing backyard wrestling, and I found this group in the San Fernando Valley. They had a boxing ring. I found them on MySpace. This is back when MySpace, right?
All
I
right.
found them on a MySpace page, and they had shows. They had a ring, right? To me, it was amazing because I was different than all the other backyard wrestling. They had a ring.
Yeah.
So I went. I talked to them. I ended up joining the company, and we had shows.
Mhm.
We did little monthly shows, and we
Yeah.
would watch TNA at the time, which
Yeah.
was like the X Division. That's like this is 2005, 2004, five. So the X Division was, like that was like the thing.
Yeah.
AJ Styles, Kevin, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Amazing Red, Loki, Jerry Lynn. Those
Yeah.
guys were like the top guys. So we would watch their stuff, and we were trying to imitate it, move for move.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we ended up doing this whole thing, and then after a while, my degree, I was going to school at the same time, so I had a degree in graphic design and animation.
Oh, great.
So so I do all the graphics
Yeah,
for
I
my
was gonna say,
company. Yeah, I do
comes
all the
in
graphics
handy.
for my company.
Yeah, it
Um,
comes in handy.
and so I was doing the flyers for our wrestling shows, or again, wrestling shows, quote unquote wrestling shows. Um, and I thought they were kind of cool for backyard wrestling shows. They were different than your, MS Paint style flyers that you would see.
Yeah.
So we would actually go to like PWG. We would go to PWG and flyer PWG.
Wow.
Um, and I mean, certain, we would get people that would go from, the PWG, and they would go to our backyard shows. And I
Yeah.
guess once they realized it was a backyard show, most of them would leave, rightfully so. Um, but there was this one guy who ended up staying for one of them, and then later on we chatted, we talked, and then he came to one of our quote unquote practices.
Mhm.
Um, and then um, he's like, "Hey, how long does it take you guys to come up with the match?" And I remember at the time I told him, I was like, "Oh, about a month. We can come up with the match in about a month." And
Yeah.
he just laughs, right? He chuckles. He's like, "Can you do one now?" I was like, "What? Oh my god, what?"
Yeah.
So I ended up talking to one of my friends that was there, who I've already wrestled a few times, and we just did this BS match.
Yeah.
It was terrible, but I mean, whatever, right? For our standards. So this guy, he's like, he was kind of impressed, and he was like, "Hey, well, if you want to come, I have an opening spot at a lucha show on Sunday. I think it was a Sunday." He's like, "If you guys want to come down, you guys can wrestle on the show." And we're like, "Yeah, of course." So then he's like, "All right, be here at this time." So we show up, and we ended up being the ring crew. I remember we were the ring crew, and we were at this like Elks Lodge. That was
Yeah.
a two-story building. And at the time it was just us two doing the ring crew. And then he had his guy that was basically directing traffic, but we were the ones, doing the ring crew. Um, so we ended up wrestling that was the beginning of it. And then after that, he's like, "Hey, if you're really interested in really seriously about doing this, we'll train you. We'll get you going. We'll train you." And so yeah, so my friend and I were like, "Yeah, of course."
Yeah.
So then I started training with this luchador named Latigo Blanco, who's well known in the Southern California area, and he was my trainer.
Hmm.
He became my trainer, and then he for months, man, he would just beat the living hell out of us. But I was so happy about it, and in retrospect, I'm proud of how we went about it
Yeah.
and how we learned.
Yeah.
Um, and then eventually he gave me the okay to start venturing off. He gave me the blessing to go venture and then to explore and kind of do things on my own. And then on like I was training like 4 or 5 days a week for like 2 years solid. I had no life, man. It was just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. I was training, and then Friday, Saturday, Sundays I was wrestling. Especially in LA, man. There was like lucha shows every Sunday, every
Yeah.
other quarter. Especially in downtown LA in that area. And
Yeah.
if you're familiar with it, you know there's a lucha show in every other corner.
Yeah. It's very
So like
popular.
on Sundays we can easily do a triple shot. Um, and we did that a few times, not always, but there was always like a lucha show going on Sunday.
Yeah. Wait,
So we
were
would do
you
typically.
were you at school at the time, or had you graduated, and were you
I was
working?
doing both. I was doing all of it at the same time. I was working. I was school, and then trading. So again, like I said, I had no life, man. I had no life. That was just my focus and dedication.
Yeah.
Um, and also at the same time, like I didn't. I lived on my own too at a certain point. So I mean, I had to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Gosh. What were you doing at the time to support yourself?
So I had a couple of jobs. One of them I used to work at a Denny's as a dishwasher.
Mhm.
I worked at his other restaurant called Cousin Subs, which is kind of like a Subway.
Yeah.
And then I was on and off with a couple other things. So one of the jobs that I had for a bit was I used to work for Toyota. I was a car salesman for Toyota
Okay.
over in Northridge.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a little bit, but that took me away from wrestling because obviously I was making more money on the weekends, so I couldn't wrestle on the weekends because I was gonna be at work, selling cars. So that only lasted a couple months, and then I did well financially, thankfully, but it was just I was miserable because I couldn't wrestle, obviously because
Yeah.
I had to work. And so I gave that up. And then another job that I had was I used to work, and I'm open about this. I used to work for an adult entertainment company.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of not on screen, not
Mhm.
on screen. I was behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So a lot of photo retouching, data entry. So I was content manager for a little bit. And yeah, so I grew around that area. I
Yeah.
mean, that's Chatsworth, Van Nuys, that whole area was obviously, adult entertainment. Um, so I did that for a little while, and then the irony of how all this happened was, it was on a Friday. A bunch of us got laid off, a whole bunch of us, because and there was a whole long story to it. We don't have to get into it, but they shut down like our department. They completely shut it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we got laid off on a Friday. I had my WWE tryout on a Monday, and then I got hired officially on a Wednesday uh,
Wow.
of that same week, which is awesome. It is insane how that whole thing happened. I
Yeah.
got let go. I got fired on a Friday, and I did my tryout on Monday, and then I did SmackDown on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I got signed on Wednesday.
Wow. God had
Um,
better plans, man. Bigger
yeah,
plans.
yeah, it's insane how that happened though. But
Yeah.
yeah, dude, I was like a jack of all trades at the time. And then during all this process, I used to work for Coca-Cola for a little bit. It was like a little sister company that
Yeah.
our job was to go to like restaurants and install like the fountain machine, the soda machines,
Oh yeah.
or to fix the lines.
Yeah.
So I did that for a little while, and then I was working for another company too in between. I was in between all. I was like Homer Simpson, where like he had all these jobs. I used to also work for a company that they would make the helmet designs for
Mhm.
motorcycles.
Okay.
So we would make the designs and then we would like put them onto the helmets.
Yeah.
So I did that for a little while too.
Wow.
Oh man, I was all over the place.
To be young
Yeah,
and have
yeah,
that
yeah,
energy. Yeah.
yeah. You have to be young and full of energy, but no, I mean, and like I said, for a couple of years, man, I had no life, um, but I was dedicated. I was stubborn, and even though I like pro wrestling wasn't like my dream
Mhm.
growing up.
Mhm.
When once I got into it, I was hooked. I
Mhm.
fell in love with it, and that's all I knew, and that's all I wanted. And even though WWE was never my ultimate goal, it became such an awesome point of my life that obviously led me to so many great things,
Yeah.
both the good and the bad.
What was your original dream? What did you really want to be when you were younger then?
So I wanted to be an archaeologist when I first. That was my what I remember was my first. It was because of Jurassic Park. So
Yeah.
I wanted to learn anthropology, archaeology, all that kind of thing. I wanted to study fossils, and I wanted to go to Egypt. I
Yeah.
wanted to learn all about that.
Do you still have a fascination for that now, Jesus?
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. I'm still a science nerd. Anything science related. And
Yeah.
then so the thing with that was that eventually once I started getting into it, I realized how much math is involved with a lot of that stuff. And I am terrible at math. So then I got super into astronomy.
Okay.
So astronomy became my thing, and I was so fascinated with the planets and all that stuff. And then the more I got into it, math comes in. And then I got into like chemistry for a little while. And that became my thing. I like anything chemistry, I was super into. And again, the devil throws in a couple of numbers and letters in there, and that kind of ruined it for me. I'm dumb when it comes to math.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
um,
we got calculators now, I mean,
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. So when the teacher used to tell you, hey, you're not gonna have that available, when you get older. No, yeah, we have it. Uh,
exactly. It's everywhere now.
but But no, I had a lot of dreams and aspirations, and honestly, pro wrestling was not what I had envisioned when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But to me, it was always something science related. That was always my thing, something in science, some sort of science.
Yeah. So
Um,
I've got to ask you then, Jesus, if
yeah.
your parents were like, oh yeah, we've got this child who loves science and loves archaeology, and now you're going into pro wrestling. So what was the response from your parents when when this started?
So my parents split when I was 18,
Okay.
so there wasn't a lot that could have, you know, and especially once I mean, I kept a relationship with them,
Mhm.
but but yeah, I mean, my parents were not into it at first, and I get it, right? Because I mean, there's a stereotype and this stigma of what pro wrestling is, and it's an unfortunate thing that we're still trying to overcome it,
Yeah.
even now, because there's it's so mainstream even now that the moment you mention WWE or pro wrestling, they think of the what the '90s were of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll,
Mhm.
and to a degree still exist. Um, so they don't often, and again, I get it, I totally understand it, I get it. uh so it has a stigma that we have to try and overturn that mindset of
Yeah.
what it can be, what it can create, and what it can influence,
Yeah.
because I mean, we see it every day. I mean, if John Cena walks out somewhere, everybody will know who John Cena is. The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, those guys, Stone Cold Steve Austin, everybody will know.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns now.
Mhm.
uh, if you were to go and go, woo, most everybody's gonna know it's a Ric Flair thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, my parents were not into it at first, and again, I get it.
Yeah.
Especially anytime I got hurt, they
Mhm.
were not into it.
Right.
Especially my mom.
Yeah.
Um, my mom was very constantly just saying, and she's to even now to this day, and I love her. I love her. But now, still to this day, my mom will be like, Mijo, just get a real job, save up your money. That wrestling is just a hobby. This is early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so they never told me to stop,
Yeah.
but they weren't really too supportive of it. But they never told me to quit it really.
Yeah.
They would just say, hey, come on, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny you mentioned about that stereotype because yeah, it's definitely something that I feel that we definitely need to push through because of what you just said there. You expressed it so well.
yeah,
Wrestlers have such an influence. Their ability to reach children,
yeah,
especially we talk
and
about we're putting something together now where we're going to raise funds for St. Jude's.
right,
So
right,
something I'll talk to you about off camera.
yeah,
But
absolutely,
doing things for children, inspiring, and also telling these stories. I mean, to be able to have that kind of intestinal fortitude to be able to do what you did for all those years, like you said, you didn't have a life. That
mhm.
creates something in somebody, that they can go on and they can apply that to anything in life now that you can do that.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
it
no.
was.
I mean, listen, and I'll be the first to tell you, man, and anybody that's close to me will tell you that I am stubborn. I am stubborn, and the passion, the drive, and the obsession that I have with this. Either I'm too stubborn, I'm too stupid to like let this go.
Yeah.
Maybe both. Who knows?
Who knows?
There's that one song. If I'm gonna be dumb, I gotta be, or if I'm gonna be tough, I gotta be stupid. Whatever however it goes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but no, I am obsessed with this. This is something that I've dedicated, especially now that I've turned my life around, and with sobriety and all that stuff, I have my focus is straight on, and This
Yeah.
is what I'm dedicated to. And then the you know, the flowers are blossoming, man, and we're building something that's I'm proud of. And to what you were saying about the how influential we can be, because we do have a platform, especially with social media. We're the closest thing to real life superheroes to a lot of these people,
Yeah.
right? We go to these. You can go to an event, and for those 3 4 hours that people are there, they forget about everything that's going on in life. Um, we're constantly fighting that saying of, you know, wrestling's fake and this and whatever. And I'm like, hey, listen, man, I don't know how to fake gravity, but I'm still working on that. But the moment I know how to do that, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
we're doing all of this high impact stuff in front of you, live, one take. We're making you, at least that's the goal, is to try and make you feel something. We're trying to make you feel all sorts of emotions. It's a roller coaster of ups and downs and happiness and sadness and anger and pleasure and all that stuff roll into one. We want you to cheer. We want you to boo. We want to get a reaction out of you. And we're doing all this live and in person and in front of you, literally only a couple feet away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's incredible.
and,
And
yeah,
you'll find some familiarity with this. I also studied graphic design and art. So
okay.
I'm same elk. And I think, I've said this many times to people, pro wrestling really encapsulates everything because you've got the rock concert, you've got the movie, you've got the sports, you've got the, motivational speaking. You've got it all. And it's constant. It's every week. It's all throughout the year. There are no breaks. It
And it's
truly
always changing, and it's always
always,
changing.
yeah, always changing. So for an artist, which, like yourself, you're obviously an artist by nature. So it's a
Mhm.
perfect platform for you to display your art in many, many ways. So yeah, there's truly a lot more to pro wrestling than meets the eye. It's not just,
Oh, absolutely.
you
And
said
and it's just a matter of building an influence. I'll tell you that, right? So like earlier when we were training, I'm still at the school, by the way.
okay.
When we were training, there's this big mirror, or a window, excuse me. There's a big window that you can go into, like the parking lot, whatever you can see. So there was this dad that I passed by, and then he walked back, and I guess he had been to our shows, but I don't know if he knew where we were. I don't know. But then I guess he realized that we were here, so we were training, and then he stood out there with his kids, his two little girls, and then one of them. So we're training, and one of them holds up a sign, and so I go out there, and I give him a flyer, and then, I gave him like a couple stickers. So well, yeah, stickers,
Okay.
to the kids, and then the dad gives me a sign that one of the girls had put up that made, and that's what she gave us. Uh,
Wow. Wow.
it was like,
Yeah.
you know, you
Yeah.
know, you know.
Yeah. 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 It's nice.
Um,
Nice. It-
so yeah, that was cool. And then what's nice about, for instance, at the events that we're running, with my company of Three Legacies Wrestling, we're family friendly. So we cater to families, we cater to the kids, people of all ages. What's super awesome, honestly, when we do these events, is seeing the bond that's being created between parent and child, grandparent and nephew, niece, whatever, whatever relationship that you may have with somebody younger than you or older or whatever. There you see these bonds. And what's also super awesome is that sometimes we get people that are not wrestling fans, but they bring their kids or somebody who is a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, within 10-15 minutes, they're just as hyped as the person that brought
Yeah.
to see the show. And
Yeah.
it's awesome because we can turn them that way, right? Because now we're getting them invested,
Yeah.
and we're making them a part of it. We're making it more of an intimate feeling, so they can actually just let go.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what this is. It's a release. It's an escape for a lot of us.
Mhm.
Except for those 4 hours that we're here training, because we train 4 days a week, 4 hours a day.
Okay.
Um, Dude, I could be tired as hell throughout the day, but then the moment I get here and I start moving around, and then I see everybody that's hyped up too, we forget everything that's going on the outside, and we're just enthralled and focused on what's happening here, and we just motivate each other to push forward and to go, get stronger.
Yeah.
Uh, Whatever issues that we may have on the outside, it's gone
Yeah.
for those 4 hours that we're here.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing that happens. And you talk about the family-friendly atmosphere, something that's had become a little bit diminished, but I think it's coming back. And I apply, obviously Jesse does that with the EWF out here in San Bernardino. It's the same thing. And watching that, like you talk about bonds between grandparents, children, even husbands and wives, it happens. And it's an amazing thing that you can still go and get this pure form of entertainment. But obviously, you mentioned then, you got signed that week. You had a tremendous week that week. So tell me, what was going on in your mind? Because that must have been, I mean, you must have had adrenaline through the roof.
So let me go back into how that tryout even happened.
Yeah.
So I got contacted about a booking for EWF, right? And it was through this gentleman named Marcus Riot at the time. Um, he's like, hey, they're looking for somebody, do you want to come work and whatever, basically in a nutshell. I was like, yeah, I'll go. So I've never worked for EWF. I had never met Jesse. I knew of him,
Mhm.
but I had never met him. Um, and then so I go, I work, and I believe that day I worked this guy named Brandon Parker. We have a match. I mean, I had my lucha outfit, my mask, my outfit, all this stuff. Basically, this,
Oh,
right?
okay. You still
So
got
that.
it.
Um, and then so the match happens. Boom, we get to the back, and then Jesse comes up to me. Mind you, I didn't. He's never met me really, aside from when I first got to the building. I introduced myself, and that was it. Other than that, we've never met.
Okay.
And then he's like, hey, he asked me about myself real quick, and then he's like, hey, WWE's coming to town like in 2 months or whatever it was. They're looking for luchadors or guys your size, Latinos and whatever. Would you be interested in a tryout? And I was like, oh shit. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I was like, yeah, you can leave it. I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So at the time, because of my work, the graphic design and all that stuff, and in the training, I was not aware of what the product was. I wasn't watching WWE, and obviously back then, this is 2010.
Yeah.
DVRs weren't really a thing yet, and at least I didn't have one.
Yeah. They're just, starting, I
It
think.
was it was you had to push on the VCR and then put the time on the recorder of when
Yeah.
to record it. So if you miss Raw, and then I didn't have a VCR at the time, so like I never saw it.
Yeah.
And you would have to go on dial up on the computer to look up the
Right.
lordsofpain.net the next day to see the results.
Yeah.
Um so I was not aware of what the product was. So I started watching some stuff and then just kind of recording some stuff in the month or so leading into it. Um, and then at the time, I was also training over at Knox Pro. So Gangrel was my main trainer at the time. Gangrel and Orlando Jordan. Orlando had just left. So was Gangrel. And I remember there was one thing that Gangrel had. He's like, whatever you do, don't show them that you're tired. Just whatever they want, just say yes. Just agree to. If they want you in the ring, get in the ring. Let them see you.
Mhm.
Um, I knew one of my stronger points at the time was selling. That was my stronger point. I mean, obviously, and I'm Latino at the time. I was in nice little slender shape, and then I'm 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
Um, so he's like, yeah, just let them see you just sell, just get in there. So just don't let them see that you're tired. Uh, so sure enough, so we do the tryout, right? So Staples Center, it was on the Monday after SummerSlam 2010, whatever day that was.
Okay.
We get to Staples Center, we do our hellos, whatever, and then we start doing this drill, and it was like for an hour. It was almost like an hour long, or whatever long it was, and it was just this thing called man in the middle, where just this one person just gets in the middle, and then everybody just kind of like beats him up and whatever, and then they're just that's it, right? And you tag in and out. And I remember during that time frame, yeah, I would get tired, of course. I would tag out for a second, catch my breath, and I'll tag myself back in.
Yeah.
But and I'm sure I upset people because I was a hog. I was just hogging the time. But I just remember what Gangrel says, like, just get in there. Don't show them that you're tired. Show them
Mhm.
that you want it. And actually, I just saw Gangrel this past weekend, and I told him that, and it was a cool little happy feeling. But so anyway, so that happened. Um, we do that. We do matches afterwards, and then at the end of it, it was like this little tournament style, and then it was myself at the end with this guy named Mercurio Jr. And so we do a match. He went up at the end, and then they pulled me aside afterwards, and there was this guy named Ty Bailey, And Ty just goes, basically says, "Hey, are you under contract anywhere?" I was like, "No." He's like, "If given the opportunity, would you be willing to relocate to Florida?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." I mean, at the time, like I said, I just got fired from the company that I was at on Friday, so I got nothing. I was like, "Yeah, sure." But I mean, I've been in wrestling long enough where you get promised the world and nothing happens.
Right.
So I was like, "Yeah, sure, okay."
Yeah.
So we get to catering. We're at catering because we were only scheduled for that Monday for the tryout. We weren't scheduled for SmackDown or nothing.
Yeah.
And they go, the people from the office, they were looking for somebody to do this thing the next day on SmackDown in Bakersfield. And they had asked the other guy, Mercury Jr., they had asked him first if he can go the next day to do this spot.
Mhm.
And from what I was told was that for whatever reason, he said he couldn't make it the next day. So then that basically Jesse says, well, he speaks Spanish, and he pointed to me. So that's when the guys from the office came over and they're like, "Hey, do you have a tuxedo? Have you ever done ring master before? Are you available to come tomorrow?" I was like, "Yeah, of course, absolutely, whatever you need."
Yeah.
So then I go and I go to Bakersfield. I did the very first thing with Alberto. I met him. I met Vince. I did the whole thing. Nervous as you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. I was
I've
gonna
never been
say.
in that position. My persona as Chimera was very Super Dragon, low key, Great Muda. I never talked. I never cut promos. I didn't talk.
Wow.
And so then here I am, basically given a mic, and he was like, "All right, this is what you're doing." Dude,
Yeah.
I was so nervous, so
Yeah.
nervous. Um, but there I was, and then I did the first night. Vince liked it. They invited me to go that Wednesday to do a second day, and then shortly thereafter, that same night, they offered me a contract,
Gosh. Just
and I
like
just went from there. But I will always, and I tell Jesse this all the time. If it wasn't for Jesse just saying, "Hey, I don't know you,
yeah.
but do you want to do it? You want to have a tryout?" I
Yeah.
was like, "What?
Yeah.
You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. You don't know me."
One,
Um,
one
but
thing one thing about that man, let's give him his props,
oh
right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
Jesse is a phenomenal individual.
Mhm.
I love him to pieces. He's just
Same.
wonderful. He's helpful to everybody,
Yeah,
always
yeah, yeah.
encouraging, but he will be honest with you, you know,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but he's
Oh,
just a pleasure. It's just that he's a blessing to be in the wrestling business.
absolutely. And I thank him a lot. I'll shoot him a text every now and then. It's especially like on my WWE anniversary.
Yeah.
I'll just tell him, like, and it's the same thing, right? He didn't owe me anything. He did not know me.
Yeah.
And then he offered me a tryout. And I mean, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the other guy saying he couldn't make it the next day,
Yeah.
who knows where I would have been.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if it wasn't for, again, Jesse, I will forever be grateful for Jesse Hernandez and EWF.
Yeah. And in what a position you talking about, like in luchadors, because obviously Alberto is the nephew of Mil Mascaras.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know,
Which is funny because when I got offered the spot, I looked it up, and again, I wasn't watching the product all the way through.
yeah,
I didn't know who Alberto was. I knew obviously I knew those guys, I knew the family from when I was a kid, but I didn't know that was him.
yeah,
So I messaged my friend, who was a huge wrestling nerd, and I was like, "Hey, who's this Alberto guy?" And then he's like, "That's Dos Caras Jr." And then I started looking. I was like, "No way!" And I had seen videos of him in CMLL. So then I saw the body. I was like, "Oh, it is!" And I saw the tattoo that he had on his back.
yeah,
Um, and that's when it all clicked in my head. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome, man! I'm very familiar with the whole family.
yeah,
Uh, so this is like Mexican royalty."
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Now,
that was unreal.
now catch me up to speed with that because at that time I had turned off from the product to myself. So Alberto at that time, I know he became world champion within that time period that you were with him fairly quickly.
Within a year, yeah,
Yeah.
multiple times.
So he was already in the main event picture when they paired you with him.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So we started. So the first day that I met him was the first day that we debuted. So we did we so it was, I don't remember the exact date. It
mm,
was that Tuesday. It was that Tuesday after SummerSlam 2010. If the wrestling historians can look that up, what day that was. I want to say it's like 13th. I don't know.
yeah,
Um, so we debuted that day, and that was the first time that we met. And like I said, Vince liked us. Vince liked the whole appeal, the whole presentation. So they invited me back the next day, and then after that, they gave me a contract. And then but it took a while before Alberto and I kind of like started bonding because he didn't know who I was. He didn't know anything about me. He thought I was legit just a ring announcer, which I
Yeah.
had never done before, which is awesome. I had
Yeah.
never done ring announcing before.
Yeah.
I just said yes to it, and I had to, back up my own talk.
Yeah.
Um,
But it was a very unique role. I mean, I
it,
think,
it, yeah.
yeah, because then you were with him on the outside and you were his manager. I think the only time they'd done it before was with Harvey Whippleman back in the early 90s when they,
So it didn't even start that way too, because um when I was only doing the ring announcing and that was it. And then they would go and they would sit me in a chair next to the commentators. And
yeah,
I was like that for a couple months. And then little by little, they started getting more accustomed to me and then knowing more about me. And then they realized, hey, this guy actually has a background in wrestling.
yeah,
So they started getting me involved. But what was super awesome about how this whole thing with Alberto started was as soon as we started with WWE, they put a rocket on Alberto, and then we just went main event.
yeah,
We were doing main event stuff for 2 years straight.
yeah,
Within the first year, he won the Royal Rumble, and then we did like the opening match of WrestleMania against Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship.
yeah,
Um, yeah, he ended up. Well, I said he did. We were a combo. We were a dual packet.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it was great. I mean, it worked so well at the time as well. It was perfect for the time.
It
Perfect.
was, and then it was again. It's not until people tell me the stuff that we've done that I realize some pretty cool stuff that we've done
Yeah.
for those 2 3 years that we were, main eventing and all that stuff. And I'm in retrospect, I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
We were representing Latin America.
Yeah.
That was all Latinos.
Yeah.
We were the guys, and
Yeah.
even though we were heels, still, anytime that we went anywhere that was, with La Raza and our people, man, dude, they were just like flock us, and it was amazing. And um, I'm proud of that. Unfortunately, Ray at the time was injured quite a bit, um, I know there was a time where there was a possible he was going to retire because of his knees and injuries. Thankfully, he's still around and he's still doing great.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, for those 2 years, man, we were Latin America, we were Latinos, we were representing, and then dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so
I,
I'm,
I was
I'm proud
gonna,
of that.
I was gonna say, I'm sure your life got busy, but it was already busy anyway before.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But and then so I was having a chat not too long ago with a friend about how things from our past can sometimes prepare us for what we have now, or for what's situations that we are living through now. So I grew up being very busy. My mom, and I think it has a lot to do with my mom and a mixture of my mom and my dad. My mom was always very ambitious and very, she was a dreamer and she wanted to do things. Whereas my dad tend to used to play more straight, so he was more anchored. Um, and he wasn't too into like the risk, but my mom was. So like she wanted to travel and do stuff, whatever. So I think I got a mixture of both,
Yeah.
where I got that ambition, that drive, and that hunger from my mom, but also the realistic aspect from my dad, where I had to kind of anchor myself and then realize, hey, is this possible? And if it is possible, how can I get there?
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, oh, I'm gonna go be a pro wrestler. All right, cool. Everybody wants to be a pro wrestler, but how
Right.
are you gonna achieve that?
Yeah.
And getting that mix between both of my parents, I think, is very helpful. And again, it's all this stuff that like I grew up that way, but I didn't realize it until now.
Yeah.
Of just constantly staying busy, because both of my parents were always like that. Let's stay busy. That was their thing. There was not a lot of downtime
Mm.
between them. It
Yeah.
was always just go, 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 and that's what I know, and that's what I'm comfortable in. So that when I'm idle, I feel weird, and I feel like I'm not advancing, and I feel like I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes sense.
but yeah, yeah, my hunger, man, my hunger and ambition. That's like I said, either I'm too dumb or too stupid to like realize I need to slow down sometimes. But I'm happy with what we've come across and what we've accomplished so far.
Yeah. Did you get to take your mom places when you were traveling, when you were working there?
So not necessarily take her with me, but I was able to, for instance, there was a few times that she ended up going to Florida.
Mhm.
So when I was in Orlando and Tampa, when I was in Tampa,
Mm.
I brought my sister, my mom, my sister. I took them to SeaWorld, and
Okay.
my niece at the time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I mean, I of course, especially in the Latino community, we're very family oriented, and that's something I was very, very proud of,
Yeah.
that we were able to help out our loved ones back home.
Yeah.
Um,
Now playing a heel. Was this something you tried before on the independent circuit, or is this?
yeah, oh yeah. I always preferred being a heel, but again, the difference between the heel in on TV versus the heel on the indies was this guy didn't talk. I never talked.
Right.
So then now I'm in a position where I'm supposed to be vocal, and I didn't know how to do that at first. I had to just watch people,
Yeah.
um, and I had to learn quick. Otherwise, they're gonna get bored of me and they're gonna get rid of me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who were some of your inspirations? Who did you watch?
so believe it or not, my sister, because she would do a lot of things that would upset me.
Okay.
She would make a lot of facial expressions that would just get under my skin. And then I realized that if it gets under my skin, I'm sure it's going to upset other people.
Yeah.
So I started realizing that like what gets under people's skin and what upsets them, and there was the facial expressions. And my sister used to do this thing to me, where when we would argue, she would do this little thing,
Yeah.
and I used to hate it. I used to hate it so much.
Yeah.
So, because it was very snobby, and then it was more like, "What are you gonna do?" Like, my mom's not gonna hit me. My mom's not gonna yell at me. My mom's gonna yell at you, right?
Right.
Uh, so I used to hate that so much because if she was right, my mom was never gonna yell at my sister.
Yeah.
She was gonna yell at me.
Right.
Um, so there was a lot of that, honestly. And then when it came to like a lot of more so just in depth, whatever, like Jay and Silent Bob, Kevin Smith and Jay and Silent Bob, because he didn't talk.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of facial expressions. For the selling, it became more of boxing, and that's because Ricky Steamboat would tell us to watch boxing or MMA fighters,
Yeah.
and how they would sell, because it was more realistic. Because obviously they're not acting; they're getting legit knocked out.
Yeah.
So to kind of study the body and how it crumbles and how it falls and then how to react, type of deal. Um, Obviously with the mix of pro wrestling.
Mhm.
Um, and then I was very thankful that Paul Bearer was a big influence, and then Paul, Mick, Heyman,
Mhm.
they would constantly pull me aside on certain things, and they would tell me, "Hey, don't do that, or do this, try this. It didn't work out this time. Next time, do it this way.
Mhm.
Um, don't stand here, stand over there."
Yeah.
And a lot of times I learned just by being yelled at,
Yeah.
because I would do something wrong, or I wouldn't do something right, or I was in the way of something, and then I would just get in the back and I would get yelled at. And I was like, all right, well, don't do that again.
Yeah. How
Uh,
old were you? How old were you at that time?
I got signed at 24. I was
Okay.
24 when I got signed.
Very young. Yeah.
Yeah, I was young. I was young, and then that's the unfortunate thing too. Sometimes when you get signed that young,
Yeah.
and you don't have anybody to tell you how not to act.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, they strapped the rocket to us from the beginning. So, um, we were main eventing
Yeah.
uh, stuff. We were, on the marquees. We were, main event pay-per-views and on these tours.
Yeah.
And that's like the downside of, the turn that my life took at a certain point. And um, it took a dark turn for a while, for several years. And then, like I said, thankfully I've been, I turned that around and been clean and sober for 2 years now. And
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Good.
And that's also allowed me to refocus and, you know,
Yeah.
get stuff together.
Yeah. Yeah. So during that time period, we'll touch on that a little bit again in a moment, but during that time period, obviously being in the public spotlight like that
Mhm.
with Alberto, any memorable moments where you guys got to maybe a make-a-wish or a kid or anything like that that really warmed your heart?
We would, we would constantly do a lot of, especially anytime we went to a town or a region that was more so heavily Latino.
Mhm.
We would encounter a lot of that, honestly. And then I do remember there was this one time, I think we were, I want to say like either Mississippi or Alabama, and there was these kids, and obviously you're not going to see a lot, versus California, or Texas.
Mhm.
But there was this kid who, his parents, they didn't speak Spanish, and they were like the only kids there. It wasn't a make-a-wish or anything. It was just like a group of kids that we ended up meeting. They did like a little meet and greet with the wrestlers,
Okay.
but these were the only kids that didn't speak English, and I can tell that they were isolated from everybody else because I remember it was myself, Alberto, and then a couple other guys,
Mhm.
and then those kids came directly to us.
Yeah.
You know how awesome that is?
Yes.
Because they connected, they identified, right? And
Yeah.
they connected. They knew who we were, and then they knew that, and then they obviously they spoke Spanish to us.
Yeah.
But having that connection with them, that they were able to relate to us, that and the whole representation matters.
Yeah.
Idea that like, hey, these are people that we speak the same language.
Yeah.
Um, and that feels amazing that we're able, like I said, and I go back to the same thing, that for those 2 years in the beginning, and even for years afterwards, we were a representative of the Latino community,
Yeah.
uh, and we were in a sort ambassadors to them, and that feels great.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think honestly, I mean, we talk about some of the other greats like Rey Mysterio and all that.
Eddie, yeah,
Yeah, Eddie Guerrero, the Guerrero family. But for some reason, I want to say that that run that you had with Alberto, being their world champion and everything, there was something different about that. Like you said, there was a statement being made there, and a shift occurred, and you
yeah,
really did do
yeah.
Latino community justice.
Especially Alberto being the first Mexican-born
Yeah,
champ.
yeah,
And then for those years, man,
mhm,
anything that was Latin America, we were involved with.
mhm.
The promotional stuff, and dude, it was such an experience that um, I'm forever grateful for. I'm
Yeah.
very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. So let's use a little bit of a negative for a positive then,
Yeah.
Jesus. So yeah, maybe for someone young who's watching today, what would be something that you would now looking back, like you said, it happened for a reason. You've come out of the darkness, you're now back walking in the light. But what would be the pitfalls now that you would say to somebody to watch out for to make sure that they don't follow those mistakes?
So on the wrestling aspect,
Mhm.
I was very guilty of being one of those that somebody older than me would tell me something, and then I would dismiss them because in my head at the time I was at a certain level of the totem pole, and in my head I was like, "Well, what do you know? You've never been in this position.
Mhm.
Um, you're old. What are you going to tell me?" Right? Type of thing. That type of mentality. So I thought I knew it all. And then the more I experienced things, I realized that the only thing that I realized was that I didn't know anything at all. Um, and I wish I would have listened to it, because obviously they're speaking from experience, and then they were trying to connect with me via
Yeah.
experience. And this also carries into our parents. There's a lot of things that my parents used to tell me when I was younger that I would just be like, yeah, what do you know, type of thing, right? And then obviously now that I'm older, and then even though I don't have kids of my own, I have a school full of kids.
Yeah.
So, and I see them make some similar mistakes where I'm telling them things, and I flashback to my parents, and they would tell me certain things, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, well that makes sense, because they've already experienced it. So they're speaking to us not to gatekeep, not to downplay us, not to belittle us, but more so to warn us, hey, don't do that,
Yeah.
because I've already experienced it, and that's not the way to go.
Yeah.
So there's that. Another thing too that I wish I would have learned was, and this is I think an overall thing,
Mhm.
was how to do my finances a whole lot better.
Mhm.
Nobody ever told me, nobody taught me. I kind of tried to learn on my own, and I didn't do it right, because right. Um, and then also too, I think that the number one thing is that your ego can always get the better of you if you
Mhm.
don't know how to control it.
Mhm.
I used to learn. I used to manage myself via my emotions,
Mhm.
and I will let my emotions control me.
Mhm.
And I realized that the moment I let my emotions control me, I already lost.
Yeah.
So learning how to take a pause,
Mhm.
instead of being reactive,
Mhm.
responsive immediately, was something that I had to learn, and I'm very grateful that I learned how to take a step back and then take a pause instead of just immediately reacting,
Mhm.
weighing out the pros and cons of what the solution can be, or what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
If I react snappy, which I was very good at that, I was very good at being snappy, and I was very good at blaming everybody else. I was always so good at playing the victim.
Mhm.
This is happening to me because of them.
Mhm.
Uh, it's all your fault. I should be in this position, but
Mhm.
I'm not because of this person. No, man. Ultimately, it always usually comes back down to us.
Mhm.
Uh, attitude is super important.
Yeah.
Um, and I think lastly too is I wish I would have picked a better circle. Uh,
Mhm.
not everybody's your friend.
Yeah.
Uh, and there are people that are going to be with you through the thick and thin, and those are the people you should kind of cherish
Hmm. Yeah.
because they've seen you through your worst, and then they still stuck by you.
Yeah.
Uh, so those are the people that you should cherish, and
Okay.
also a lot of times that's family.
Yep. Yep. Very, very, very true. Is this something now that you impart upon your students now? Because I think, obviously now you're a coach, you're training the superstars of tomorrow. Is this something that you would build into a program now? Because some of them may get scouted, they may get a rocket
Yeah,
strapped to them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
So
would you teach that now in your classes to how to mentally manage things as well?
the wrestling, well, not just wrestling, I think life as a whole is just so mentally draining. And
Yeah.
I will be the first to admit that for many years I was not a believer in this whole idea of mental health. I'll be the first to admit it. Obviously growing up, hey, we're men, we're Latino men, we don't talk about our feelings, if something's wrong with us, we just throw it away and we just move on.
Mhm.
uh, it wasn't obviously until going through therapy and all that stuff, and I became more aware of what mental health really is.
Yeah.
And even though I still don't fully comprehend it, but I am a believer in it, and I do know that sometimes things can get very overwhelming. And I tell these guys sometimes the worst place you can ever be is sometimes stuck in your head, and then there's a lot of things that you just can't control. Don't let that live in your head because there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing that you can control is how you react.
Yeah.
And then I go back to the same thing. Sometimes you just have to take a pause
Hmm.
and then breathe and then realize, all right, if I go down this route, where's that going to take me? If I go down this route, where is that going to potentially take me?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of, more in a more calm manner, pick your pick your road.
Yeah.
Um, so no, that's something that I definitely talk with the guys, and I have these little powwows, and I talk with them, and then there's times they call me at 3, 4 in the morning, with some of their issues, but that's also part of what we do.
Yeah.
I'm not just here to coach them in the ring, but I'm also just to, again, I can connect with them via my experiences and what I've gone through.
Yeah.
And then if I can help them avoid certain situations or help them see it in a different way to have them make a better choice
Mhm.
or opinion, then yeah, I'm all for it. I'll stay up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning to talk to them.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm proud of some of the changes, and I see some of the changes that these kids have. I say kids, some of them are, full on adults,
Yeah.
but I've seen the changes in them and their personality. We get them involved with a lot of community events here, and then I know at first they're like, man, this is dumb, but
Mhm.
then the more we do it and the more they see the impact that we can go and make in people's lives for the better, they also feel a sense of reward and a sense of feel good for
Yeah.
themselves because they feel more accomplished and they feel like they're doing something to help somebody else
Mhm.
instead of just feeding the ego, because it's not about that. It's the more we can help other people, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, and I think it's true. What you hit the nail on the head. A lot of the guys, some of the guys realize that going into the business. Some of the guys realize it later on. But I
Mhm.
think, everyone comes to that realization at some time or another. And but it's incredible. What you just said there inspired me so much because again, you've experienced all these things for a reason. It's led you to this point. And now you can
Mhm.
truly be, a true coach, not just a coach in the bit wrestling, almost like a life coach in some ways.
Mhm.
You really have the ability to connect with these kids and these young adults and prepare them for what's to come. Because, like I said, it is a responsibility,
It is.
at the same time. So reflecting back on so if you had your run in WWE, so now you exit the company, and obviously fill us in a little bit. What happened between then and your present now.
So after I left WWE, in a quick little run through, I
Yeah.
ended up going to India. I got contacted to go to India to open up a wrestling school. It was owned by the great. It still is. It's owned by the great Khali. So
Okay.
it was CWE in Jalandhar, India. So I spent 6 months over there. Um, by the time that I ended my time there, we ended up running three major cricket field events. The first one we drew about 20 some thousand. The second one we drew about 52, and then the last one only because it was pouring rain we did about 13,000. Um, After my time there, because I was posting everything on social media of what we were doing and then the buzz that we were getting. Um, WWE had not been to India in about 14 years.
Okay.
But because of, and I don't know if it's directly because of that, but I'm pretty sure it had a lot to do with it.
Mhm.
WWE ended up going to India for the first time in 14 years. Impact ended up going shortly thereafter. We had both WWE and Impact scouts that went to the school.
Mhm.
Um, so that happened. That was super awesome. That was a cool experience. From there, I ended up we went to Australia for a little bit. I went to Australia and then I ended up going to England. I spent 4 months in England.
Yeah.
I did the summer camps over there, which was awesome, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Awesome experience. Awesome experience.
Yeah.
Um, I spent 4 months with the Knight family. That's Soraya Page's mom
Okay.
family,
Yeah.
Soraya. So I spent 4 months over there, and it was such an awesome experience.
Mhm.
I come back to the U.S. I ended up going to San Antonio. I was a part of Hybrid School of Wrestling in San Antonio, which was awesome. Chris Marvel has something super awesome down there. And then from there, I ended up going down to Mexico City. I was helping run a TV show slash wrestling called Nacion Lucha Libre, which was owned by Alberto Del Rio.
Okay.
We did some tapings down there, and then the dreaded years of COVID happened.
Hmm.
Uh, so then we finished taping. I ended up going to LA to visit my family, and then COVID happened. So everything shut down. Um, so I went through a little rough patch in that time frame, and then I got a call from this gentleman from Cairo, Egypt, and he basically says, "Hey, we saw what you did in India, and we would be wondering if you'd be interested in coming and doing it here in Cairo." So sure enough, I had nothing else going on. Obviously, like I said, it was COVID time, so everything was shut down.
Yeah.
I ended up going to Cairo. I spent close
Mhm.
to a year in Cairo.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because of again the COVID, it was a lot of start, stop, start, stop. So unfortunately, nothing big came from it, which is a bummer because there was a whole lot of amazing people down there.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, I come back to the U.S. I hit another rough patch in life, and that kind of led me into. I ended up going to rehab here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then when I got out, I opened up my pro wrestling school of Three Legacies Wrestling with my partner Christopher Dreisbach, who was the owner of the rehab center
Okay.
um, of the place that I went to. So between my business partner Chris and then myself, we opened this up, and then um, yeah, it's the last 2 years that I've lived here has been amazing, and I'm so happy that we decided to do this. Because when we were talking about what I've done, and again my resume basically, I
Mhm.
told him I've opened up schools all over the place. Not opened up, but I've helped run schools in all over the place. And then he just goes, "Well, why don't you just open up your own?"
Yeah.
And that's when we're like, you know what, let's do it.
Yeah.
So then he helped me with all this, and then I'm very grateful that for the last year and a half we've built something pretty cool here. And between the school, the monthly shows, the community stuff that we do, we partner up with the food banks. In the past, we were partnering up with another one at the new venue that we're going to on June 29th in Lebanon, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
We're teaming up with the American Cancer Society for our Red Rose Rumble 2, which is that one,
Okay.
on August 3rd of this year. So it's for the sake of being able to give back to a community that's given us so much,
Yeah.
and to be able to connect with community efforts that when I was going through my stuff,
Mhm.
these are the same groups that were helping me, in whatever city that I was in.
Yeah.
So this is my way of giving back to those groups that were helping me when I was in need.
Yeah.
Uh, so if we have the ability and we have that platform to get a community together to make it a stronger, united one,
Mhm.
then why not? If it's going to benefit other people in the sake of food, clothes, possible shelters, financially, whatever it may be,
Mhm.
uh, or even just for the sake of getting them clean and sober.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm all for it, but I'm very proud of everything that we built here between the students, myself, my business partner, Chris, Chris, and then, another one that I owe the world to, and then his name is Bobby Guinea. I owe him the world because he's awesome at what he does, and then I don't know anything about math, but he keeps, the book straight, so I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you got to
But
have a good one like
yeah,
that. Yeah. But then your involvement with MLW as well. So when did that start?
I got offered a spot with MLW close a little over a year ago. It's a little over a year ago now. Um, and it was supposed to be a one-off, and then it just kind of went from there. Eventually, I got offered this position as an agent,
Yeah.
and I've been with them ever since. We just did this huge event in Chicago. It was a MLW and CMLL,
Okay.
which was insane because to me, the my goal in professional wrestling was CMLL
Hmm.
because I grew up watching Lucha Libre.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned earlier who my very first pro wrestling hero was, and that was Atlantis.
Yeah.
And then I got to tag team with him in Chicago, so that was surreal.
Yeah.
That was honestly so amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, and then so we did that, and then in 2 weeks on June 1st, we're going to Atlanta,
Okay.
uh, and then MLW just started traveling again, so it's gonna be just go go go, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds wonderful. Out of all the things that you have done, all the hats you've worn, though, is there one thing that really truly stands head and shoulders above the rest?
Coaching,
Coaching. Yeah.
coaching,
Yeah.
seeing them live their dreams is rewarding.
Hmm.
Seeing the little light bulb turn on in their heads when you're explaining something, and then that aha moment just goes click, is rewarding. Seeing people that I helped, that I was a part of their upbringing,
Hmm.
go and then achieve the level of success that they have, be it WWE, AEW, whatever, the independents,
Hmm.
um, is rewarding. And then every now and then, and this is where like it breaks my heart in a good positive way.
Hmm.
It makes my heart melt rather, is when they send me a message every now and then, just checking in.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I'll just say, I love you. And I was like, dude, that just,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
ah, man, that gets to me. And it's crazy too, because through my company, I've had some of those past students being a part of the shows.
Mhm.
Um, and I see them and I see their growth. And then, before they leave, I give them a hug, and then I just tell them that I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
At MLW, there's three of them that I was a part of their upbringing, and then I see them relatively pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Uh, and I tell them, how proud of them I am, and
Mm.
it's pretty cool
Yeah. That's what
coaching that.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I can't think of anything more rewarding than that. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, Jesus, do you have faith? Are you a man of faith?
So, yeah, so yes and no.
Yeah.
Obviously, in recovery, we seek a higher power,
Mhm.
and whatever is out there, whatever power out in the universe, man, there's something there. What it is, I have no idea, but there's something out there, and then the universe is just, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's beautiful. It
Yeah.
can be very beautiful.
Yeah. You're very beautiful being led. A few last things here. So today, are you still in a good relationship with Alberto Del Rio
Yeah,
from those
yeah,
years?
yeah. Actually, yeah. I talk to them every week.
Okay.
Yeah, we have our weekly call, and we just talk and just chit chat and banter, and then talk very little wrestling, which is great.
Yeah.
We'll start like our first couple minutes of just, hey, so what you do this weekend type thing, and we just go off in a tangent of just like talking about each other, and then talking, and just it's pretty cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That for the last 14 years we've maintained this relationship, and I'm very proud of them.
That's very, very good. Yeah. And then the current products, do you still keep up to date with WWE and AEW?
Not as much. I see via Twitter, X. That's kind of how I follow it, and then I listen to Jim Cornette the next morning,
Yeah.
or Cornette or Conan on Keeping It 100, and I'll kind of get my news on what's happening there.
Yeah.
Uh, but not as much. I mean, and it's I know it's a flavor of ice cream, as Vince would call it.
Mhm.
Um, but I'll always be a WWE guy, man. I will. I mean, it's no shade to any like AW or any of that, but like yeah, I learned a lot from WWE. WWE is what made Ricardo.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's always gonna be that sense of loyalty to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So, what is on the horizon? So, your future plans would be just continue what you're doing, or is there anything else that you're thinking of?
I have, well, I mean, I have immediate goals and I have long-term goals. Obviously, I mean, obviously, I'm very happy with where we're going with Three Legacies Wrestling. We have our next Rumble show, which is our WrestleMania.
Yep.
Uh, that's on August 3rd, and we have a baseball stadium that we have to fill up.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. Brandon Gatson is actually going to be out here for that
Oh,
one.
he is. Oh,
Gatson will be
okay.
out for that.
All right.
He's been to my shows a few times.
Okay.
So that's obviously my goal. Immediate goal is to keep pushing through Legacies Wrestling. That's my number one. To keep pushing MLW, right? That's there too. And I've been very vocal of where I want to end up. Where I want to end my career. I want to end it in WWE, and
Okay.
I don't have to be in front of the camera. I would love to be a producer backstage, trainer,
Yeah.
uh, something backstage. I don't have to be in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Uh, but my ultimate, and I've been vocal about it before. My ultimate goal is to return to WWE. That's what I would love to do.
Yeah.
Um, but I know that right now life has some plans for me, and that's just where I'm at right now, and I'm okay with it. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. That's a
Um,
good feeling to have. It's a
yeah,
wonderful feeling to have. We'll have to get the exact information from you so I could put a description in the video
of
of the
course.
and all of the other content details. One of the things that you didn't mention there, and I'm gonna go there. So, what about your love life there, Jesus?
Uh, Doesn't exist, man. Doesn't exist. It's hard though. Don't get me wrong. Like, listen, I've tried, but just it's busy. And I've tried.
Yeah.
Uh, but sometimes it's hard even when you explain to them. If they're not familiar with the wrestling world, it's hard.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I've had dates, with some women, and it
Yeah.
hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Uh, Still looking, maybe one day I'll find one, but
When the
uh,
time is right.
yeah, when the time is right, like I said, right now, just this takes up a lot of time, and it would be an injustice to whoever becomes my girlfriend, eventually possible wife,
Yeah.
um, that I can't give them time, and then that's not fair to them.
Yeah, that's true. You're very, very busy, very, very busy. I'm very impressed, very inspired by the story, and very grateful and thankful that you came on and let the whole world know, whoever sees this, rather,
Sure,
that we can have big aspirations, but
of
but whoever
course,
sees it is meant to see it.
yeah, absolutely,
We'll get something from it. And like I said, you've had a stellar career for such a young man. All the things you've accomplished, I commend you for that. And I'm just inspired by who you are today. And I'm glad that you found that out and you discovered that at this early juncture because you're still young. So I'm
yes.
glad that you found out quickly. So
Thank you,
that was a
thank you.
blessing. So Jesus, stay on. I'm just going to say goodbye to all the viewers. So thank you for joining us today on this episode of Victoire. This has been Jesus Ricardo Rodriguez, wrestling superstar, a true legend in the making. Until next time, victor what you must victor in your lives. Victoire.
Au revoir.
Merci. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Victoire. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. It helps us spread these inspirational stories near and further. Until next time, victor what you must victor in your life. Victoire.